In this factory complex on the plains of northern France, a new breed of biofuels is being born. While crops like sugar beet are already used to make bioethanol, this pilot plant tests more sustainable feedstocks that will help cut carbon emissions. We're discussing the challenges and opportunities of biofuels production on commentvisions.com and also speaking to specialists across different sectors. First, Dominique Dutart, who heads the French Futurol project to develop new recipes for biofuels. There are different types of biofuels. There's what we call first generation and second generation. What's the difference between those two?
The big difference with the second generation is that it involves the non-food part of the plant, and it uses plants that aren't grown using intensive farming techniques.
Here you've got a project where you're looking at different ingredients in the recipe. What possibilities are there?
For the second generation of bioethanol, we want to replace the sugar reserves of the plants with the structural sugars. So we will use either co-products from the food industry, for example, bran, wheat straw, sugar beet pulp or forestry production, short rotation coppice, or herbaceous lignocellulosic plants like miscanthus or switchgrass.
To uncover more on the issue, we're in Cambridge in the UK to meet Professor Ottoline Leiser. With second-generation biofuels still in development, she's been investigating criticism into the market as it stands now. Professor Leiser, the Nuffield Council on Bioethics report that you co-authored recently found that the current policy on biofuels was unethical. What's gone wrong?
So I think it's mostly a problem with speed. Biofuels are a really important component of our efforts to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, and as a result, a lot of governments around the world have put in place really quite ambitious targets to drive their rapid adoption. There isn't the capacity to make those biofuels easily, and a lot of the synthesis and manufacturers then gone out of this country into countries where there may be less good human rights records.
We often talk about the question of sustainability of biofuels. What kinds of criteria do you think should be imposed to reach that goal?
Sustainability is essential from a biofuel point of view. That's the whole point about them. They're supposed to be replacing an incredibly unsustainable thing, which is fossil fuel. So there are quite good ways to assess the amount of greenhouse gases released over the whole life cycle of the production of a biofuel and compare that then to the equivalent amount of energy out of fossil fuel. That's a very important component. The second point is just about wider environmental sustainability effects on biodiversity and so on, and that's to do more with issues like the rainforests. If you're cutting down rainforests to grow biofuels, then you're having wider impacts than just releasing greenhouse gases.
You're a professor of plant development. What are the right kinds of plants to be making biofuels from?
The initial drive has been in these food crops where there's very easy carbon available in the form of sugars and starches, which are very easy to ferment. And there's some good arguments for continuing to use plants like sugarcane in Brazil, which is actually a very efficient producer of fuels. But in the long run, and certainly in northern latitudes, I think what we need to do is to look at dedicated biofuel crops like these willows that we see here, and also wastes, both municipal and agricultural waste, things like straw, forestry waste, that kind of thing.
Across town, we caught up with Tony Juniper, former director of Friends of the Earth, to discuss how biofuels fit into the wider climate and energy question. What threats and opportunities do you think biofuels offer developing countries?
There's been quite a lot of publicity, a lot of it justified, in terms of some of the downsides of biofuels developments for developing countries. On the other side, however, and we hear less about this, is the incredible increase in demand for energy that's coming in the developing countries in the coming years, and the extent to which nations in Africa, Asia and Latin America are going to be able to leapfrog past the dirty phase of development that happened in the West with oil and coal and gas and go straight towards renewable energies. Now, if they're going to do that, I think biofuels has to be part of the mix.
Do you think that Europe has the right policies in place regarding biofuels?
Europe, like some other parts of the world, rushed into biofuels as a place where there could be some quick wins made on carbon emissions. We soon found that that was not necessarily the case. But again, you know, it's not so simple as to see this simply as a question of biofuels policy, because this is about land use and it's about energy much more broadly. And even if we do something about the sustainability of biofuels, have we done anything about the much bigger question, which is about how we're going to use limited land over the next 60 years to meet the needs of 9 billion people for food, for energy, for fibre, for water, and all the ecosystem services and carbon sequestration that has to happen at the same time. So for me, it's not a question of whether we like biofuels or not, or whether biofuels are good or bad. We're going to have to use biofuels, and the question is, how are we going to harness them in the most sustainable, most socially beneficial way?
While the debate continues over how to achieve those goals, the French team's second-generation biofuels should be in commercial production within 5 years.